to you for attending. Like I said, the first one of 2024. Can't thank you enough. I know that it's a big old thing. The diaries are really, really squished. So huge thanks from us. Massive thanks to Dan from Cargill, who's here today. So Dan, original SRAG member, in a new role with Cargill, and we're going to speak about that in a bit more detail in a minute. But Dan, some of you may have met at previous in-person SRAGs. A very, very welcoming guy and a person that has given up his time today. So I can't thank you enough, Dan, on behalf of all of us at the SRAG. Okay, just a quick overview on why this topic is really important for us as the social recruitment advocacy group. You know, firstly, there's a huge number of ex-serving personnel out there. Okay, so this is a really big and resourceful talent pool. A recent census report tells us that almost 1 in 25 people over the age of 16, have been serving. So, you know, this is a big, untapped talent pool that we really feel that, you know, as businesses, we can reach out to and recruit and retain and support and develop even more so than we already are. And then one of the things I know that Dan is going to tease out today is all these positives of working with people that have been a serving personnel. So, you know, we really today want to focus on the positives. So Open University Study 2022, anyone that knows me will know I love a bit of research. I love a bit of a study that's gone out there, okay, has found that there's a huge talent depth to people that have been in the military. Okay, we're going to start today. So firstly, Dan, good welcome to you. Do you want to say hello to everyone before I even start firing some questions at you?
Yeah, hi, yeah. I'm Dan. I used to be part of Reed Bordel Group. You might have known me from there. I was the head of HR for there, and I moved over to become the senior HR lead for animal nutrition health in UK and UK and Ireland. So I've come across here, which is only 10 minutes up the road from Reed Bordel, so it's all good fun. It's good for me.
They're nice and close. So Dan, what we feel works really well on these lunch and learns is we really enjoy speaking to people who have that lived experience. So like I said, we've got a set of questions, but at the same time, don't be frightened to go off topic. Like I said, we've got the questions from the audience as we go as well. But we really want to get to the bottom of some of these things. We want people to come off this call. You know, it's only a quick call. We're going to be finished by 2 o'clock at the very, very latest, but we want them to come off with a few little nuggets of information and of your lived experience. So are you happy, Dan? We will begin.
Yeah.
Brill.
Absolutely no problem at all. Yeah, so as you may be aware, as you're aware, I'm a veteran forces. I retired in 2013 after over 17 years service. I joined as a soldier, and then eventually through my career, I was recommended to become an officer in the British Army, went to Sandhurst. One of my little anecdotes from that is actually I served alongside Wills and Harry, both in Sandhurst and operations.
Wow.
So that's always a bit of an eye-opener. Very, very good fun to serve alongside Harry, especially. Will was a little bit more reserved, but obviously he's the future king, so he has to be. But yeah, many of our operations: Afghanistan, Iraq, Sierra Leone, Bosnia, Kosovo, Northern Ireland for a couple of years as well, which was very interesting. And I was really exposed to a lot of different cultures and environments, which has really opened my eyes to, you know, even today, the way society thinks and the way society views things as a world, both insular and externally. And working in HR has given me a real opportunity to look into that people side of skills. You know, and that's one of the key things I want to talk about as I go for the questions, you know, from the military, of the experiences that we have in there and how it works into Civvy Street. The problem we have there, obviously, is it comes to an end. And as this question here says here, you know, we're not in the army until we die. There is a set time limit. I did just over 17 years, which means I'm pensionable, which means I have an army pension. But there are a lot of serving personnel who do like 12 years, you know, 10 years, like that, you know, good experience, but they don't have an immediate pension. So there's a financial impact upon that. The other thing as well is obviously it's almost like a conveyor belt leaving out. And for me, when I left the forces in 2013, it was really about the impetus about what's happening in Afghanistan and such and like that, but not about what we're doing with the troops afterwards. I literally landed 2 days back in the UK from Afghanistan on the Friday, sorry, 3 days. On the Friday, I just landed back in Brize Norton, back up to the North Yorkshire. And then Monday morning, I was in my new house in Richmond as a civilian going, what do I do now? So that, I mean, that's the quick transition over how, you know, it's almost like a conveyor belt out of the system. So please be aware that, you know, we've had this institution where you're working, training, working all the time. And suddenly after so many years, you're left, you know, up to your own devices. You know, I felt like I was forced into conveyor belt. The last 6 months was, well, 9 months was, got to get some training courses done, got to get my CIPD done, got to get this done. Oh no, I've got to look around and try and find work now. All at the same time, I'll try and prepare for Afghanistan. You know, what am I going to do about housing? What am I going to do about where I'm going to live? You know, I'm no longer in military quarters. And it's these real challenges, you know, that immediate now what we're going to do over the next 6 months that really impacts a lot of soldiers. Those who are doing 4 or 5 years, even more so, because they have no income coming into them to look after them regarding housing such as this. So maybe their focus might be slightly different. You know, it's a difficult transitional period. So my main challenges was marketing myself in the market. You'll find a lot of military personnel out there who don't know their value, and in a way, civilian street doesn't know their value either, and therefore it's that they're banging heads together trying to find out what, you know, what can I do with this individual. And you'd be quite surprised in the skill set that a number of veterans do actually have, that they underplay themselves. Veterans do try as bolshy as they can be with a few drinks and as much fun as they can be within a social atmosphere. They're actually really humble about their achievements and what they've done. It's taken me 10 years out of the military now, and a lot of encouragement from like my partner and things like that to really understand what I've done, what I've experienced, and how I bring that into the workplace. So the main challenges for me, you know, were marketing myself, getting myself on the market, sitting down with other organizations to let them understand what values and skills I can bring to an employer. And there's some really, really good ones out there, which I'll go through in a second.
Thank you, Dan. So 17 years, that's a long time, isn't it? It's a real long time to be, and like I say, going all the way around the world, rubbing shoulders with royalty. You've just let slip. Yeah, that was a nice little opening story. You're not going to top that one. So well done. But so 11 years you've been out now. I mean, you've talked about some of those challenges then, but what was your kind of what support was there from the military? Was it really good? Career support? They knew you exiting. Was that strong?
Well, I mean, it's at the time. I mean, it's changed now with the Veterans Office. It's starting to change and become much better, but there's still an overhang from there. At my time when I left, there was very limited support, especially for someone in my position as a former Army officer. We were expected to already have that network in place. We were already expected to have that ability to walk into a job. That's the expectation, you know, from the military side of things. So it almost comes a bit of a shock when it comes to the last 6 months and you're like, oh no, I've not set up, because that wasn't my planned time of the career. You know, what I was is you have an intermediate commission which only lasts 10 years, and obviously I'm a previous soldier service there. A lot of officers generally do a regular commission, and they can do up to the age of 55, so they can build that network up. So for me, it was a bit of a shock. For soldiers, it's the same sort of thing. You know, soldiers are basically just doing how to do your CV, how to do an interview. And at the time, these were from institutions that really weren't aligned with what was going on in the civilian market. So a lot of these soldiers are coming out ill-prepared for interviews and ill-prepared to sell themselves. And, you know, it's got better over the years, but I think that's probably because there's a lot more understanding from employers as opposed to what's happening within the MOD. Sorry, I see there's a hand up. I do apologise.
Yeah, no, go for it, Matt. Go for it, please.
From a soldier's point of view, coming out, I came out to the Army in 2000. My regiment was on tour in Northern Ireland at the time I came out. Very little, if any, support, unfortunately. The one thing to remember as well, a lot of these joined the military from a very young age. So they, you know, you're talking from 16 to 18. So they haven't really got that experience of, you know, as Dan said, selling themselves, job interviews, simple things like registering a doctor's surgery. They've never had to do. So it's just making sure we bear things like that in mind as well.
Yeah, no, thank you. I know we've got at least 3 people that were serving here. So if anyone else wants to chip in at any point with similar stories, or I'm not going to say cause an argument, but at the same time, please do. Yeah, Nathan, come on. Let's introduce Nathan as well on the call, please, Nathan.
Yeah, hi, everyone. Again, what Dan's talking about there was really interesting because I joined the Royal Engineers as an electrical mechanical design draft person. So I was a skilled tradesman as I was leaving the Royal Engineers. And I couldn't get a job in that sector for love nor money, and ended up becoming a security guard, because that was all, to your point, Dan, I think, all I felt I was fit for, right, to a degree. That there was a lack of support on that exit. Don't get me wrong, landed on my feet in the end, but again, it was the hard work that got me there, rather than the relocation or the resettlement team to help me get that done. So yeah, strikes a chord, as I would suggest.
Yeah, and I think leading on from that, that's really important, is about our own marketability as veterans, and also those who are about to leave the service now. And I think it's improving, but it's having the employers taking that time out to understand the skill set of veterans coming out. A perfect example was my first interview was with Hayes, to understand, get myself in the market, how to get myself out there. And when I was discussing my background regarding JPA implementation, which is a self-service system that came out in the late 2000s, the change of the Army Act in 2006, which meant military law meant you no longer march people around at 200 miles an hour, but you had a real process that was really aligned with civilian streets. The response I got back regarding dealing with contractors and dealing with, the Army Act and how we discipline people and grievance procedures and payrolls and auditing was, oh, I didn't realize you did that. Oh, I thought you run around in green kit and basically carried rifles. And this is from a HR, recruitment agency, which is the background that I came from. I was SPS, which is Staff Personnel Support. I was an ex-regimental admin officer. So it's that lack of understanding of actually, do they run around just with rifles, as opposed to there's a qualification, a skill set that these people have got real lived experience. I agree that we're not used to civilian markets. I agree that we're not used to the exposure of interviews and that side of things, and CV writing from all the way along through, and I agree that said before that a lot of soldiers join young. But again, it's the other way around. I was going to go on to that a bit later regarding advice, but I just thought I'd point that out as well.
No, thank you.
Another question, Craig, just quickly before
we
go on to the next.
Go for it.
Anne, I think. Anne, you've got your hand up.
I have got my hand up. I'm maybe jumping ahead, Dan, but there are questions about the military covenant, but maybe that's at the end. If you're an employer and you specifically want to employ people who have served, where do you go to find them?
You are jumping ahead, Anne. Thank you.
Yeah, Anne, I'm going to have to.
Sorry, okay, no, hold that.
It's all good.
We're going to have to tell Anne off, aren't we? Anne's on the naughty step, I'm afraid. Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
She's jumped too far ahead. It's okay.
No, it's fine. It's okay.
I'll just say one thing, that I think your point about people not knowing their value, that is common across all the groups that we deal with. It's people understanding what their value is, and when they're asked what their skills are, I think many people on this call would struggle if we did, okay, tell me what your top 3 skills are. We say, oh, I'm not sure. So I think that's a very valid point.
Yeah,
and just talking about that skill set, Dan. So you mentioned some accredited skills, but what kind of soft skills do you feel that you've brought into Civvy Street from your military background?
I think from a personal perspective, there's a lot of, because I've worked in so many different operations around the world, Afghan, Iraq and things like that, I had a lot of exposure with local populace, a lot of exposure with local infrastructure and, society in general across the board. 1 minute I'm in Bosnia, the next minute I'm in Iraq, Afghanistan, Northern Ireland. But you'd be really surprised in the similarities of their main priorities are, their home, their family, and that sort of thing. And having those conversations has really opened my awareness of people's needs and wants. And I think that's really bringing a strength for me personally in my position as a senior HR executive, to allow me to understand what makes people tick and what makes, what people's needs are, so I can, open it across the board. And I think a lot of military personnel have that skill set as well. Not just in the soft people skills, but also a sense of resilience and a sense of will-do attitude. You'll find, and I'm not trying to be disparaging of the younger generation per se. It's more of a case of there's a change of priorities for people as time goes by. And I think what you'll find with veterans is there is that strength and resilience to move with the times, but also roll up their sleeves and get the job done. And I think that's really important in a lot of organizations where we're trying to find our way in this new world of AI, this new world of post-COVID and everything else. you'll have a fundamental team in the middle for projects and things like that. And I think the veterans will have that strength and resilience, that will to get things done, and also that awareness and, you know, resourcefulness, or think of the bigger, wider picture as opposed to what's directly in front of them. So I think they may not be quite unique because we all have them across different sectors, but I think for the veterans, I think they can bring this real strength of character and a sense of unity within an organisation and buy-in.
Thank you, Dan. No, that's brilliant. Thank you. So, have you encountered any misconceptions or negative stereotypes? A little chuckle here. Is there anything that, like you said, you mentioned earlier about someone thinking all you did all day was run around wearing green with a weapon, but what else have you experienced?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm sure the veteran's going to chuckle with me. I saw them all bouncing away in the little cameras in the corner. But yeah, here's that misconception of running about with shouting at people, marching around at 300 miles an hour, and basically doing all that lovely war-y things in tanks and, you know, engaging with the enemy. You know, but also from a soft skill perspective, you know, maybe thinking that we only can do what we're told. We don't have lateral thinking. You know, we have a very, you know, you're very military in your approach when we try and get things done, because we sometimes can be a little bit more robust because we're looking at the end game as opposed to what's in front of us. You know, and it's just, yeah, it's I'll put a few things down here. Sorry, I can't read my own writing, which is very poor writing. Apparently, that's a misconception for the military. But yeah, no, seriously, there's lots of stereotypes. I mean, you've probably seen it in the old war films and things like that, and what you see there, and that really inflames in, you know, the idea of who we're about. But actually, we're not. You know, we have a lot of skill sets across different sectors, you know, that we can offer, from engineering to HR, what I do, to operatives, to project management, to leaders and management. Coaching and mentoring, you know, is a really big factor in the military. That coaching and mentoring side, you've got some real opportunities there with individuals who can showcase their skills by being coaches and mentors, or leading a project, or leading something and managing something. And me personally, how I've addressed them is literally just showing them who I am. You know, you're going to see Dan as, you know, the ex-major in the military. You know, he's done all his operations. He's, you know, maybe he has PTSD or whatever it is. But no, actually, when you actually meet me, it's delivering what I deliver. It's basically surprising people. And I enjoy surprising people, because it's like they see this ex-military guy and go, well, what can he bring? He's going to be very narrow-minded in his focus. But actually, no, there's a breadth of experience. There's a breadth of skill set. And actually, I can be accused of being pink and fluffy sometimes in my approach. So, you know, maybe that breaks some of the challenges as well. So it's, but yeah, we have stereotypes. I spoke about before about what people thought I did from the HR perspective. But, you know, the only way you can address it is be there and take that chance with the individual, and they'll really surprise you. Don't get me wrong, there are some bad eggs and everything, but in the whole and main, a lot of veterans will surprise you. The only thing they don't do, and I'm guilty of it myself, is blowing our trumpet to you know, let you know beforehand.
Does that upset you though? You keep using the word surprise. Does it upset you that you almost have to surprise someone, because there is that stereotype there that you may be some of those things you mentioned?
Personally, no, because I like the challenge. I like it's like that. Oh, you can do this, and it's like that. Actually, for me personally, in some cases, maybe I didn't realize I could do that, and it surprises myself. So I do. It doesn't disappoint me. It doesn't upset me. I like, and that's probably a military perspective. We like proving people wrong. And I think, and I see there with a couple of smiles going on there, they agree with me. We like proving people our value, you know, that we can do the job. And I think that's a really important thing for employees to look at as well. You've got somebody who will drive forward.
Real, thank you, Dan. We've got some claps. If you ever want to use any of the emoji features, please do. We love them on Lunch and Learns. Yeah, so we've got some virtual claps going on for that one. Okay, so just moving on a little bit to some of what Anne's point earlier around, you know, you now work, you are a HR professional, you've been out at 10, 11 years now. So what advice would you give to fellow HR professionals if they were considering, you know, this talent pool that they wanted to recruit better from this talent pool, essentially?
Yeah, I really would try and get involved in things like Anne alluded to, like the Army Covenant. You know, there's a great they have great regional officers, the Army Covenant Service, who can give you some support about how you link into military, military personnel. They give you a great introduction of what the military is about, not just the pomp and ceremony, but actually introduce you to the young workforce that are presently doing it now. And these could be your future employees in 10, 15 years down the line, and having that early introduction will really give you a foot into recruitment. Get involved with your regional recruitment centres as well. They're all dotted around the UK. And by having that will give you a foot in straight away at the early stage of individuals who are actually transitioning from the service, maybe in the last 6 months, the last year. And the one key thing is not many employers do it. And when you do it, you get some massive buy-in from the veterans who are at the start or halfway through their resettlement period. They really appreciate employers come and talk to them face to face. I did it with Catterick, which is the North Yorkshire area. And the veteran feedback from that was, this is what we're looking for. We're looking for employers to come and see us. And what that does, it actually gets you that loyalty, that buy-in for, and it allows you to talent spot yourself, individuals coming on board. It costs nothing, apart from obviously the day out of the office, any resources that you have for the day and time. And what it does do, if you think about it, the cost of trying to recruit somebody, especially in the market now, that is valuable. Absolutely valuable. It's free networking effectively for your organization. I'll go back to the covenant again. The real good thing about the covenant as well, it can really shape your policies and your support mechanisms about linking into these people. When you want to go to the I know it's a lot of information. I do apologize. Come email and I'll give you the links and everything else that you need. Career Transition Partnership is really key as well. This is an organization that runs a transition from military to civilian for individuals. And it's also a good link-in for recruiters. They've got job boards which you can advertise on. You can have virtual, presentations to who military will come on board and view your presentation, what your company is about, who you're about, what job vacancies you have. And it's almost having little road shows on your site where teams that are coming in. These are really good, and these will get people engaged again with your company. The CTP also has a roadshow or a network once a year in all the different regions. And there's a lot of people who attend these. The Northeast one, which I was going to do with Reed Bordle, which is happening I think has happened actually. It's happened in my time since I left in November time. 4,500 service personnel are attending that. Mm. Now you think about it, in this difficult market to recruit, that's 4,500 people with a good skill set, that you may not be able to find very easily. And once you get that buy-in through Covenant, who shape your policies, who shape the way you're working, you've got the CTP and the regional recruitment centres, you've got that buy-in. The first person they're going to speak to when they leave the forces or prior to leaving the forces is you guys. And straight away, you've got a bought-in, ready, available, qualified and eager employee for you. That's the tap-in I was lucky to have because I've got Catterick up the road, but you've got garrisons across the UK, which you can really tap into. Not just garrisons, just individuals as well. So I would say, please reach out, open your recruiting funnel, open your recruiting channel. Do not be afraid to step forward and say, oh, well, I'm only a small organization. I guarantee you now that 5 minutes you spend with somebody would mean a lifetime to that individual who's coming out of the forces. It gives them that reassurance. And if you can, one of the things the strategies that I utilized was actually interviewing soldiers before they left and actually offering them a role before they left the forces. I did a similar sort of thing with the model with the prison service, which I won't go into that. That's something we're going to do later with SRAG. But doing the same thing with the veterans. I tell you, the world of difference for an individual to know that they're coming out to a job, as opposed to having to come out and then trying to look for a job in a market that's competitive, in a market they don't understand. It makes the world of difference. And I tell you what, the smiles, the buy-in, the loyalty, dare I say, these are individuals who will stay with you for a long time. A good example, an anecdote I have, is when I was at Reed Bordle, they had a driver academy with a service personnel. He came out, he was about to come out, he had severe PTSD. He was really struggling. He was afraid of the workplace going out there. What we did is we interviewed him prior to his departure. We offered him the opportunity with the academy to get a HGV license. He started his academy work with us. He was released by his commanding officer for the last 3 months to work with us. And they can do that. They can do early release and earn both wages. so you've got the opportunity for them to come in and see what you like, see if it works out while they're still serving. He struggled really badly for the first 4 weeks. We invested time with him. We released him for Christmas. I personally drove him back to Burnley from here in Boroughbridge, which is, say, between Leeds and Manchester, same sort of distance. I personally drove him back to him. I spoke to him. I got to know him. I spoke about, army stuff and all that business. He relaxed. He spent a couple of weeks there. He came back, and now he's still working Reed Bordle. He's been offered jobs in Burnley for £1 to £2 an hour more for a shift. And he said, no, because I spent that time with him, brought him on board. I've now got a driver. I'm not going to, not me, I'm no longer there. Yeah. But Reed Bordle have now got a driver that is going to stay there for 10, 15, 20 years. That's unheard of in that market. So it's that sort of little things we can do, the little buy-ins, the little, working with regional recruiting centres, working within the Covenant and the Covenant offices around the UK. You've got a ready-made funnel and a willing workforce, which will give you amazing skill sets across the board. Sorry, that's my little bit of an impassioned speech, but yeah.
No, thank you. That's what we want. We want that passion and we want those speech. Thank you. So last couple of questions from us before we open to the floor.
Of course.
And I think you may have just mentioned one there in the second question about that driver there. But yeah, can you share any success stories or positive experiences of people that that have left the army, have gone on to have really successful careers in Civvy Street?
Yeah, I mean, I've got a lot of colleagues of mine, who are former officers and everything else, who now work around the world. And, for Nathan Statham works in New Zealand. He works for an agency out there, which works alongside the United Nations for humanitarian aid. We've got a lot of veterans who work in former operational areas, to support local infrastructure, engineers and things like that, who are working with local governments to support themselves. I mean, there's almost this thought process of, we want to give back, we want to continue the work that we've done previously. I'm not going to go into a political discussion about, the situation in Iraq, Afghanistan, the background of that, but there's a natural, from that perspective, I believe there's a natural tendency of unfinished work. We don't go out there to do a military thing to, kill the enemy, engage and stuff like that. We're actually there to look after population, to support people, to rebuild their lives. And that natural inclination to help people upwards continues even after we leave the military. So there's a number of individuals who follow that through, working, as I said, working with charities. There's a number of charities being set up. Veterans and Logistics is a perfect example of an organisation who I've worked closely with when I was at Reed Bordle, who are now being recognised by the likes of Andy Burnham in Manchester and things like that. They've been recognised from a governmental point of view because they're helping veterans, not just veterans, but other people from a homeless situation into work, giving people training development, give them opportunities. And a number of military people have been the cornerstone of setting up those sort of organisations. So yeah, we're not just about marching around in green. We're actually here with a heart for people and making people be the best they can be. And that's regardless of what sector you work in the military. You could be an engineer, you could be in the Navy, in the Air Force, you could be HR like I am, you could be an infanteer. It's not about, as we say, getting rounds down the chamber. It's about actually picking people back up and looking after people and protecting people. So whilst I'm not talking about individuals, Help for Heroes is a perfect example. Whilst I'm not talking about individuals directly, you can see out there the footprint that veterans have across all spectrums of life, care, education and all sorts. And they really want to give back as much as they've been given to them. And that's the key thing.
Thank you, Dan. Very much appreciated. Like I say, I think now's the perfect time for our audience as well. So please do any questions around business, any questions around recruitment. Dan, like I say, is a HR professional. So, and I'm going to say an expert, Dan. We're happy to say that. Yeah, he's taken that title. So we're official expert on HR as well. So any questions you may have, maybe a lived experience question, and we'll go for a raise of hands, and then Emma's task. Sorry, Emma. Emma's task then is to select. So please do come forward. Yeah.
What I will say just before we open up to questions, we've had some great comments from Laura and Zoe in the chat with lots of resources. So what I'll do is I'll round those up. And we'll kind of share links and resources after the call. We've got Amelia, I think, with the first hand up. Sorry, yeah, Amelia,
sorry,
then Danielle.
I was just turning my microphone on. Hi, thank you for that talk. It was really interesting. So thank you for sharing your experience. I'm director of ESG for Speedy Services. We're actually signatory of the Armed Forces Covenant. We've struggled to recruit in, and I've spoken to our HR teams about what that might be. And one of the barriers has been salary for us. And I was just wondering, an open question, is there other things that we could be doing if we've got a bit of a barrier of point of entry around salary at the minute? So there are other things that we can support with to try and get some momentum behind the partnership that we've got.
Could I ask, is there any particular sectors that you're struggling in regarding barriers to salary?
So I don't. So I can go away and get some more information. So when we've looked at it, so we joined the partnership over, I think it must have been a year or so ago. And when I've been looking at, you know, how many people have we recruited from the ex-armed forces under that covenant, it's been nil. So we get advertised, so we hit the lists because we're seeing Speedy come up in certain job listings, but we're not getting anyone through. And what we're being told is it's the salary isn't attractive enough. And I'm wondering, is there other things that we should be doing or showcasing?
I think, yeah, sorry to interrupt. Yeah, I think perhaps that step forward into the regional recruitment centres would really advertise your company. I'm going to be honest here. I think there's probably from a person leaving the forces, there might be an expectation of higher salaries than they expect. So, for example, you'll have somebody who's done 15 years as a soldier, maybe a sergeant who, you know, staff sergeant, who is on nigh on 30,000, 40,000 pounds a year. And there's expectation that when they leave, they're going to get an income very similar. And I think it's probably a case of, this is where the military need to come in a little bit more from the recruiter side of things, is that open, honest aspect of, look, you're not going to earn 40,000 pounds per year doing your job. It's going to probably be about 35k equivalency on Civvy Street. Don't be afraid to be open and honest about that, you know, and you might not get the traction that you may do that, but I would advise you, and that's a similar situation that Reed Bordle had, was actually step into the world of a veteran, the individual about to transition from the army. So go and do their presentation, showcase your company, both in the networking shows that they do, but more importantly in the region, in the resettlement centres directly. So get your HR team out there or your marketing team out there, just do a bit of a showcase about your company. And I guarantee you now that by doing that, it will open their heads to, actually, yeah, I'm getting out for a start. B, I need to start looking what's on the market. Oh, actually, this company's come out to see me. They're giving my first port of call. I've got that information. I'm going to look at the market while I'm still in. Well, actually, what they're paying me is quite comparable to the rest of the market. Therefore, the expectation is going to be naturally lowered. And that's what I had to do, naturally lower their expectations prior to them getting out the army, because then they won't automatically say no to you. And you might, and straight away, you'll get that buy into your organisation anyway, because you've taken that time to see them. And maybe that will, you might not get hundreds beating your door down, but you might get those 3 or 4 suddenly going, actually, I want to join you guys because you came out to see me. I don't know if that helps.
That's really, that is really helpful. And I wanted to ask, because I wanted to hear it from the voice of, you know, the people applying, you know, what would be the barrier? And what we suspected was, because there would have been a higher salary in the forces, so then coming out, it's a bit of like, oh, well, that's a lot lower. And it's just trying to see how we can position ourselves, because there are other benefits, you know, we can provide and stuff like that. So that was really helpful. Thank you very much.
Just to add on to that, sorry, it's really key that military personnel don't understand benefits, because it's naturally given to them within the forces, that, you know, medically and all that sort of side of things. They don't understand when you say, I'm going to give you benefits. We don't, I say we, I'm now out, I've been out a long while, but you don't look at those benefits. You just see the bottom line figure. So maybe having a look into what these benefits mean for individuals on top of that would really, really help them as well.
Could I just quickly ask, would you be willing to come and talk to our business, particularly our HR team, so that they can garner this insight and all these little nuggets of information you've got to help see whether you know, we can do something slightly differently. So if you wouldn't mind, can I take your details off this call and we can chat outside?
I'd be delighted, no problem at all. And I'm free, as in my role, I'm free to come down because I have to travel to Ireland anyway a lot of times. I'm free to travel to.
Well, we can do teams and things to start. I really appreciate
cool.
that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. So we've got a few more questions. I'm going to go Lauren first, then Matt, and then Zoe and Danielle. That's okay. So Lauren, you've got your hand up.
Hiya.
People plus in the back.
So again, just to echo, thank you so much for sharing. It's been really, really insightful. My partner's actually in the military, so I guess I see it through a different lens because I am so not military that it has been a learning curve. But I guess from that, I see both him and, you know, his lads. I see the skills they have to offer. Like I always say to him, God, if I could hire you tomorrow, like I'd be like you and your lads, I'll be getting a pay rise because we'll be smashing it. And I guess and you know, along with that, so many of his friends have left in the time that we've been together and have really struggled, very much so following kind of the path you said about going into security, because that's what army does, like ex-army does. And I guess just like I'm all about the blue sky thinking, so do notch me down a peg or two. But obviously you said about kind of reaching out to the regional recruitment, and you know, and that's been really helpful because my question's always been like, how do we find these people, because they're not necessarily going to come to us. But as you know, this group on this call, through all of the network and all of the stuff that we have, what could it potentially look like to have or make a better alignment between military and like, you know, civvy street, so to speak, like rather than it being we're all individually going out to regional recruitment, could we be the people that make a change? And like I said, blue sky thinking, I know I'm famous for going perhaps a few miles ahead rather than steps, but thought I'd throw it out there.
No, the five steps ahead approach is something that I do as well. So don't worry, I'm right with you on that one. No, that's exactly. It's about a harmonized approach across the board. I think what we can do as an organization, as an SRAG, is we can actually teach the regional recruitment centres, and we could obviously assist the CTP, which is the Career Transition Partnership, a new way of thinking. I think the problem you have, though, is if they keep doing the same thing over and over again and don't get proper feedback from organisations such as ourselves, or we don't take the initial steps of actually taking ourselves into that environment, which is why I keep talking about going into the regional recruitment centres, then the same message comes through and through to the individuals who are coming out the army, and you'll get the same impact of people coming out, not understanding their worth, struggling, trying to find work. I mean, myself, I was homeless because I couldn't find work because I didn't understand my worth. And I was a senior officer in the British Army. And so you can, you know, it's not just, you know, the ones who've been in a short time. But yeah, eventually, by us being involved in that, we can make a real impact. I'm very lucky because the CTP regional area, she was actually my corporal and I was in command of her. So straight away, we had that relationship and we had that buy-in. But whilst I've been in there, what I've been able to do is make that change within CTP. Make that change by saying, well, we can do this and we can do presentations, and they change their program around us. And suddenly they change the message around us. And suddenly we're getting more engaged people coming out the forces. So, and straight away, you guys have a ready-made employees coming on board. And I think that's where you're right, Laura. And I think this is where SRAG can, is it SRAG or SRAG? What do you want to call it? Because I think we're all a bit, you know.
I'll go for SRAG, please.
SRAG, because it sounds good.
I'll go SRAG. Yeah, I'll go with that. I'm happy.
SRAG.
Maybe it's a military thing, I don't know. But I think you're right. I think we can make a real change there, because as an organisation, we can then approach CTP, for example. We can then approach, you know, other governmental organisations, the Veterans Office, for example. We can talk about saying, actually, we're working really closely aligned with, let's get ourselves in there and bring ourselves that way around. We have that influence and ability to do that, to make some real effective change. And it benefits both the employee or future employee and the employer.
Yeah, I think it's very much about you know, I'm like, there's so many different industries and businesses on this call, but it's not always about them finding us. Like, I think it's we have to find them almost, because and it's the same like when I look at kind of early careers and, you know, the world's changed and actually we have to go and give them a nudge and be like, you know, you can make a fantastic career. But it's that even though we're not talking early careers, it's a early career in the sense of a new career and a new start, I guess. But yeah, thank you.
No, I agree. And
Thanks,
I think
Lauren.
we as organisations need to take that step forward. We as organisations, the market's changing, don't forget. It used to be 5 years ago an employer's market. It's now an employee's market. They can decide where they want to go. There's much more flexibility where people want to go. As organisations, if we want to make that change, we need to take that step into the unknown. Let's break that unknown and let's start knowing about what's coming ahead of us, if you know what I mean.
And it's a really important point. I mean, we'll come on to this, Lauren, but one of the things we are doing is putting together a veterans toolkit as part of the SRAG. You're right, you've got me thinking about it, Dan, now. And as part of that, we are looking at all of those kind of referral routes. We know that we've got a lot of them that we can really kind of harness in that. So we'll come on to that in a little bit, but it's a really important point. So we've got Matt next, then Zoe, then I'm getting we've got quite a few questions, so I'm going to go Matt next, then Zoe, then Debbie, if that's okay.
Mine's more of reaffirming a bit what Dan said, is when looking there, getting in early in that resettlement program with those veterans, so that they know what's out there. A lot of the times, and quite a lot of veterans and serving personnel are on that neurodiversity scale. They have some of these issues. So when they come out, if they're not feeding into their system already, they're going to struggle with trying to get in and understanding their worth, their value, what their strengths are. It's part of being neurodiverse, unfortunately, is that you tend not to know your own worth and put yourself down. If you can get in nice and early within their resettlement programs whilst they're still serving, show them the value of your business, your companies, what you offer them, give them support, and they're gonna be very good. They're gonna respond to that, and more than likely, as Dan said, work for that company for 10, 15 years. And be very, very loyal, regardless of whether they can get a better paid job elsewhere. It's just making sure to get in nice and early so they know what's out there and they've got a clear understanding of the processes. The toolkits that SRAG are putting together can give you, different things you can do once you've got them engaged, but it's getting that engagement nice and early, I think.
Is really important. Yeah, thanks, Matt. That's brilliant. We're going to go Debbie, then Laura, if that's okay. Zoe, I've captured yours as well, so we'll pick that up in a second. Okay. So Debbie, did you want to come in?
I did, yes, thank you. Dan, thank you ever so much. As a mum of serving boys, or not anymore, thank goodness, because Afghanistan was enough every time they're out there. So what you say, I can really. I hear from my boys as well, so thank you. I really appreciate that. Recently, we've had a Veterans Association open up close to me. So as part of patient transport, I went up just to introduce myself, find out what we could do as a business to support them. But I was really surprised as well that they're struggling to get younger veterans through. They've had a couple through that they've helped back into work. But we sat and we had a chat about, social media, and they're going to try and do something to do a bit of an advert for say the younger veterans for maybe a weekend, and then I'm going to go up there and have a chat and talk about what patient transport is and what else G4S do. Is there anything else that you can suggest that apart from obviously going up and offering what we're already going to be doing volunteering from, so jump straight on that, bless them. So is there anything else we can do to try and support the veterans in terms of employment?
Yeah, little things like you know, if you've got a CV, for example, from a veteran, is a lot of veterans don't understand how to what we call civilianize their CV. So they might not used to terminology that we're used to on a day-to-day basis. As Matt said previously, a lot of these guys and girls, especially girls as well, are joining when they're 18, 19 years old. You know, it may be younger, in some cases, 17 and a half. So they've never experienced terminology that we see on what we call Civvy Street. You know, so when they try and write up their CVs, they might have a fantastic skill set that's overly qualified for what you're looking for, and exactly the right person, what they're doing there, but they don't understand how to put it into CV terms that you understand. So I'd say, if you get a CV from a veteran, have a look into it and see if you can understand what that individual is trying to say. And if in a way, invite them for an interview. I know there's a number of organizations now for the Covenant who are actually saying, if you're a veteran, bring them in for an interview. Because I guarantee you now, 99% of the time, not all the time, but 99% of the time, when you have that person in front of you, they will then be able to explain exactly what they mean by when they've done this and this and this. And you'll be able to turn around and say, well, actually, yeah, you're exactly the candidate we're looking for. Or if you're not quite, or if it doesn't work out, give them good feedback. If you can do this better, if you can do that better, so they get to understand what's happening out there. And if they're not right for your business, actually, they might be right for, Ellen's business or Vicky's business or Andy Honeyman's business as well.
Yeah.
That way they can experience and understand, how do I grow and develop from this? You're missing tricks with individuals. It's just we're not speaking the same language. That's the problem. Yeah. So, much as we do for when we go abroad, we try and learn that language, and they've got to try and learn our language. It's that working together to ensure that happens. So I would advise, if you can, I'm not suggesting that you have to do it, is actually bring them in for an interview if the CV seems okay. It might not hit all the spots, but they'll explain it. Even if they do the interview and they fail, give them good feedback afterwards, so they get to learn from that and move forward for the next opportunity. And, if you don't understand something, don't be afraid to ask the individual, hi, we really like your CV. We understand you've got a bit of experience in this area. Can you please expand on that, please? And they can go away and put it, think about it, give it back to you in more flavour. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. If it's not right for you, it's not right for you. But at least you've given them that chance to get their foot in the door in the first place. And that's what I've done previously. And we've got some real great people working well. Reed Bordle have now got some real great people working for them now.
It's going to take a while, Dan.
Yeah.
So we've got Laura next, and Danielle. Sorry, Danielle, I know you've been waiting for a little while. So Laura, did you want to get them in?
Yeah, just to kind of follow up on a couple of points really around sort of can the SRAG group do something more collaboratively? And I think the answer is absolutely yes. If there is a will from the group that says, do you know what, this would actually be really beneficial, I'd like to be part of that sort of side group, as it were, that really helps to work and have a greater influence and hopefully make it more efficient by us not having to all go and have conversations individually. If I could just ask you to respond back to Craig with a sort of a yes, I'm interested, and we'll start to look at what does a subgroup look like and what can we do collectively, so that everyone can kind of lean into, and we're not having to have multiple conversations with the same organisation.
Sounds good.
Thanks, Laura. Danielle, sorry, and then Zoe.
Lucky at giving time. It's good.
Save the best till last. That's what it was, wasn't it, Emma?
That's exactly it, Danielle.
Yeah. Don't worry, mine's just dead straightforward, Dan. I know you well, so, and it might be a pretty obvious question, but I thought it would be best to hear it from the horse's mouth, so to speak. As an employer, why is it important for them to recruit ex-veterans, apart from it obviously being the right thing to do, but in what do you think, why it's really important to incorporate it as part of their recruitment strategy?
I think, as I said, I alluded to before, a lot of veterans have a, you know, especially those who are also coming out, you know, in the future and now, they actually have a wider ability to think of the wider picture. You know, there's, you know, if somebody's been working in an environment, as in, you know, they're a productive operative for 20 years, they know about productive operator. As a veteran, as a serving personnel, whatever, you know, Army, Navy, Air Force, yes, the mantra is soldier first, but actually they've got so many more skills on top of that. They've got so many more opportunities and experiences above and beyond their job. They've done a lot of work externally to, you know, if you say I'm an infantryman, all I do is run around with a rifle. Actually, no, they also help support building infrastructure in Kenya. They've got experience of supporting people in Afghanistan. In Sierra Leone, they've got a liaison experience of working with young children and things like this. And this is your young 18, 19, 20-year-old. The medics, for example, you know, some of the stories, the things I saw in operations, for example, you know, young 18-year-old girls who are dragging 6'4" paratroopers under enemy fire to this day will never leave me, because I'm just complete and utterly in awe of them. And then when they come out, they've got this strength and this resilience that you would never have seen before. And I think that's what veterans bring, you know, young veterans as well. You know, they have this maturity within them that might not otherwise be there, that you know, I'm bringing along this youngster. Yeah, he's been in the army 3 or 4 years, but actually 9 times out of 10, this person's got that level of maturity and that wider way of thinking than perhaps the individual who's probably been to university or who's been to, you know, I'm not saying they haven't got a wider way of thinking, but a different way of thinking that you might not otherwise realize, or even just working for an apprenticeship or working in one sector field. You've got this young lady or young gentleman who's actually I can do that, and a will to do it, roll up the arm sleeves. I want to prove myself, you know, because that's what I want to do. So yeah, it's not just about them being able to march around and do things. It's inside as well. I think there's a lot of inside that we don't realize, and a lot of potential we can realize through veterans as well. From an employer perspective as well, what I wanted to quickly, sorry about this, very, very quickly, is actually there's a financial saving for when you get a veteran. So the first year after service, employers actually don't have to pay NIC contributions. The government will pay it for them for all service personnel who leave in the 12 months after they've left. So if you get somebody directly from the military, you've got 12 months of NIC savings. Any budding financial directors out there would be rubbing their hands on this one. But even then, if they joined you 6 months afterwards, they would still have that 6-month period where you'll get NIC savings as well. So financially, any FDs out there, it makes sense too as well.
Thank you, Dan.
Thanks, Dan.
Much appreciated. Very conscious of time. We did promise we'd be finished at 2, and we always stick to time. So I'm just going to quickly go through some of these top tips. Dan, if I miss anything off, please if time allows, do jump in. But just quickly to go through, Dan has probably covered, I think, most of these, and we're just looking through them. So look at designating a forces champion within, you know, your new starter training program. Could that be a workforce buddy? Could that just be someone that they can call upon? It can be something as simple as that, you know, a 10-minute conversation each week. How's it going? How is things going? We was going to include a video today, which was showing the young veteran and their transition into Civvy Street, but we didn't have time. But we can share that afterwards with some of the resources. Dan, you've mentioned this a lot today, but I think the skill, like you say, for the veteran is getting their skills across, but also we spoke a bit about that recruitment team, maybe understand a bit more around some of those skills. So again, just working with your recruitment team around that, and then also some of these more practical tips about how to get into buildings. And again, as Laura said, we'll work on that as a collective. Talked about this a lot, Dan, so I won't go over this again, but again, we'll get some of these acronyms across and broken down. How do you get your jobs out there into this virtual world? Bit similar to point 1. Oh yeah, one, sorry. One, Emma, sorry.
Sorry, Craig. I was just going to come in here on the Career Transition Partnership. Yep. We've got an established link with the Career Transition Partnership. So what we will do is try and get them as a guest speaker at one of our SRAG events or SRAG events, so they can come along and give some top tips.
Thank you. And then last but not least, we've mentioned a lot, was signing up to that Armed Force Covenant, which I know some of our members already are and are very active with that. But again, if you haven't done that or you're not aware of that, please go away and have a little look at that. And again, we can support you with that. So a couple of slides, as Laura's already mentioned, thank you ever so much for your attendance. But if you want to know a bit more, you want to reach out, you know, this is a really burning topic for you, please do keep it within the collective. As nice as Dan is, I don't think he's going to want 27 emails from individuals when he's just starting a new job. So please drive them back into us first. And as Laura's already mentioned, we can then start to look at how can we facilitate that? How can we really manage that? But I keep saying it on these calls, but how can we then make the most impact for the group? And yeah, we were looking at expanding our toolkits, and it feels like reading the room, the virtual room, this is a real issue for us all, and this is something we want to improve. So a toolkit on this topic would be very, very needed and appreciated, I think.
Can I come in again there very quickly? It won't take up too much time. I was just going to say on the Veterans Toolkit, what we'll do, as we've done with the previous Neurodiversity and Prison Leaver Toolkit, is we'll co-create that. So we'll have specialist partners like CTP, like others, as well as people with lived experience and employers. And I think that will give us a really good kind of route map to help support your businesses.
Yeah, thank you.
That's it from me, Craig.
No, that's right. Dan, I did sneak that in, your national insurance, but you've already covered that. That's great. There's some additional reading for members. So again, if you want these slides afterwards and you're a SRAG member, please do drop me an email. We'll get that shared with you. And all that leaves me to say is thank you ever so much. You know, the attendance was through the roof. The engagement was through the roof. I think we could have gone on for another 30 minutes easily. I know some of you have probably still got questions. Again, what we will do is, if you're not on our LinkedIn group, again, just have a look out for that. We'll send you some friend requests on there, and we'll get a little follow-up, Dan. So we'll just do a little post on there. So if there's something on there that you have missed over this last hour you want to ask Dan, that's a great place for us just to informally ask some more questions to Dan. And as I've already mentioned, I'll get my email address back up. Please do reach out to me. You've all got my email address because I've sent you this invite. So yeah, and thank you all. And Anne, you're back off the naughty step. Sorry, you weren't on it for long. Okay, we've took you back off. So
I spent my life on the naughty step, Craig.
Okay. And yeah, last but not least, Dan, thank you ever so much for sharing your wisdom, expertise, your lived experience. I know some of those topics weren't easy to talk through, so really thankful to yourself.
No, you're welcome. And if any strategic support I can help with, how do I approach things, or how do companies approach things, please, I'm more than happy to help and support. You know, it's a real passion of mine as well.
Brilliant. Thank you all. So I make it bang on 2 o'clock. So yeah, have a lovely afternoon, everyone, and a great rest of the week. And thank you again for attending and engaging with us today. Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, guys.